Hi, and welcome to the Mindset video for this week. Today I want to talk to you a little bit in depth about having a math focus with your child and the importance of the very foundational skills of math and how you can begin to foster that and build those math skills even when you're not sitting down and doing a very structured math activity or a math worksheet, which is what we typically think of as doing math with our kids. The foundational skills, so skills such as counting and manipulating different numbers and how things relate to one another, how objects relate to one another in space, all of these types of foundational skills are so critically important before we get to what we usually think of as standard math operations like addition and subtraction. So that's why we spend so much time in this course working on counting, number recognition, and in particular a skill called one-to-one correspondence, which I've previously talked a little bit about, but it's worth talking more about here. One-to-one correspondence means when a child recognizes that a number stands for a certain quantity of things rather than just being a word in a sequence that you say when you're counting. So in other words, when a child is counting, they usually learn their numbers by memorization and they're used to counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if you're not developing the skill of one-to-one correspondence with your child, what often happens is that they believe that counting is just repeating this string of words, almost like saying a poem or saying their ABCs. 5 is just a word that you say after 4 and before 6, when really what you want to get into their minds is that 5 is a quantity. 5 stands for a certain number of actual things, whether those things are pieces of cereal or toy cars, or whether those things are even abstract things like 5 ideas or 5 thoughts. You want them to understand that that number stands for a quantity. And that's one-to-one correspondence. Fortunately, establishing one-to-one correspondence is fairly easy because all it involves is counting with your child a wide variety of real objects. By doing that, instead of just focusing on repeating the sequence of numbers when you count, your child will naturally absorb what 5 is. So, in addition to one-to-one correspondence, and working on counting a wide variety of things, what I encourage you to do to develop foundational math skills is to just really notice how children are using math in their play and pointing this out and noticing it out loud to the child and praising them for it. You really want to catch them in the act of using math as they're playing, which they do all the time. And when we point that out to them and we notice it, not only, first of all, does it make us as parents feel a little bit better that even though we're not sitting down with them and doing a worksheet, that our children are actually getting real concrete math experience in their play and in their everyday lives. So it makes us feel a little bit better. But it also encourages your child when you can point that out to them and praise them for what they're doing and make them see that their mind is really operating, on that higher level. Then they start to build confidence and they're far less likely to have a hesitation when it comes time to sit down and do math. They don't think of it as some very foreign and abstract concept that they're not familiar with. They think of it as something that they already know how to do. So a couple of ways to notice when your children are doing math. You'll see them doing it a lot when they're building or working with anything where there's a quantity of things. So children love to line up objects, and sometimes they'll put them into a grid. And you don't have to necessarily name the mathematical operations or concepts that they're doing. You simply need to point out what it is that they're doing and say, do you know that that's a type of math? When children line up items in a grid, it's a form of multiplication. They're making sure that there is the same number of objects in each row and lining them up until they either run out of objects or until they have a nice, neat little square grid there. And that's a form of multiplication. You see children doing this a lot with Legos. They'll build, or building blocks. They'll build one tower over here, and they'll have a shorter tower over here, and they will calculate, without even thinking about it, how many more blocks do they have to stack up on this tower over here to be the same height as this one. And if you're playing with your child, you can even ask them little questions like that out loud. Well, how many more blocks do we need here to make these towers the same height? When they answer, you can say, wow, did you know that you just did subtraction? That's a form of subtraction. But whether or not you know exactly what the child is doing is really beside the point. It's that you're calling it out and noticing that your child is working with numbers. Anytime they're working with measuring, shapes, quantities, comparing one object to another, whether it's the height of something or the amount of something, all of these things are forms of doing math. Recently, my child, she's older than preschool years, she's still in her early elementary years. She was playing with a set of cubes. She had 6 cubes. And she said, look, Mom, I can make them into 2 piles of 3, or I can make them into 3 piles of 2. And I said, wow, do you know that you're doing multiplication and division? And she was so proud of herself and so floored because she thinks of multiplication and division as something that her big sister does. She didn't realize that she was actually doing that. And I threw in for added measure, I said, do you also see that you can make 1 pile of 6? And she just learned 3 multiplication and division facts there. But more importantly, she felt really proud of herself and really pleased that she could do multiplication and division when she was just playing around with a bunch of cubes. So it's little moments like that that really serve to not only make yourself feel good that your child is doing math and is progressing just in their everyday play, but it really helps to build your child's confidence in those skills as well. And the more that you notice it, the more you learn little tricks to be able to work on math skills through play so that you don't have to pull your child to the table to do a structured lesson. You can take whatever it is that they're playing with at the moment and do what I call sneaky school and work in some practice with certain things. So it's great practice for you as well to begin to notice all of that. Repetition is extremely important in math. That's why we repeat the counting exercises. It's why when your child gets to learning actual math facts, addition and subtraction facts, it's important to repeat those. Memorization of things like math facts was really unpopular in the education world for many years, and now it's starting to come back and have a resurgence because people realize how critical it is once your child gets to the higher grades and starts doing more complex math that they actually have these math facts memorized. So especially, at the preschool age, playing around with units of 10 can be really, really beneficial. To give your child, like my daughter was playing with 6 cubes, to give them 10 cubes or 10 of anything, and just let them play with those numbers. Let them see what breaking it into 2 groups of 5 look like, and that you can also make a group of 3 and 7, or that you can make 5 groups of 2. Letting them play with the unit of 10 is a fantastic math skill to practice that you can easily do through play with 10 of anything. Another really great thing to do with preschoolers to work on future math skills and to really lay a solid foundation is just to work on vocabulary. So there's no way, once you get into the addition and subtraction and to actual what we would consider math in kindergarten and 1st grade, if they don't have a strong understanding of the words that they'll be using there and that math vocabulary, they'll struggle, even if they have a good concept of numbers and quantities and things like that. So the more that you can work math vocabulary into your everyday life, or again, notice it and capitalize on it in those moments when it comes up naturally. And there's tons of different categories of words that fall into math vocabulary. One of them is quantity words, words like more or less or equal to. Another one is prepositions. Prepositions are math words. So anything that shows space and relative positions, such as before, after, later, sooner, which leads into another category of words, which are time words. So any vocabulary related to time, what an hour is, what a minute is, what yesterday is, what tomorrow is, the days of the week. Any words related to time falls into the category of math words. Same with money words. Any vocabulary related to money or vocabulary related to measuring, so units of measurement like inches or feet, or longer than, shorter than, heavier, lighter. Anything related to measurement also counts as math words. Additionally, words that show order. So first, second, third, those are called ordinal counting as opposed to standard counting, which is just 1, 2, 3. It's helpful for kids to learn ordinal counting, first, second, third, and so forth. All of that is fantastic foundational math skills that you can practice with your child just in conversation, no matter where you are, in the bathtub, in the car, in the kitchen. The kitchen is a great place for math, lots of measuring in the kitchen. So keep vocabulary in mind is a wonderful way to work on foundational math skills with your preschooler. It will go a long, long way to helping them when they get to kindergarten, first grade, and they're sit down at the table to do more structured math exercises, to just take off and soar because they will have those foundational skills. They don't necessarily need to jump into addition and subtraction. We need to go even below that to the subfloor of the foundational math skills and really build them up with those first.